In this section, we'll go over the latest JavaScript features so you can use them in your React applications. Let's talk a little bit about the naming here. So ECMAScript is synonymous with JavaScript. It's the formal standards body name for ECMAScript. Why can't they just call it JavaScript? And that's because think about who might own the trademark to the term JavaScript. And right now, it's currently Oracle, so they own the trademark to JavaScript, so that's why everybody refers to this as ECMAScript. That's the standard body name. So ECMAScript 6 came out in the middle of 2015 and introduced a ton of great features to enhance the language. So think of it like you're using any other language like C# or Java, and they come out with some new language features. They don't break the old features, but they add new features on top that make your life as a programmer easier. What are we going to cover in here? So some of the big things that were introduced are classes. Historically, JavaScript had the capability to use prototypes to emulate classes, but there wasn't a first-class language construct for classes. We'll talk about scope, about arrow functions, about modules, template literals, default rest and spread operators, destructuring, optional parameters, object.assign, and object initializer. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of everything in the newer versions of JavaScript, but what I'm hoping it'll give you is just a jump start into these features so you feel comfortable using these new language features as you begin to write React applications. So let's get started. So where we'll be working is in the last set of labs, we set up both an ES demos directory and a TypeScript demos directory inside of our code folder. So let's go ahead and open up ES demos, and we'll use this as our playground, our kind of area to do little demonstrations and better learn these new features of the language. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Okay, here we are. And if you remember, basically the way this is set up is there's a source directory and a program.js file in there, and we run a compile command, and that outputs the program.js file in the lib directory, and that is the one we can run. So right now, if I wanted to run this file, I would change directory into lib and run node, right? Node is what runs JavaScript, and say program.js. Incidentally, if you're curious, if you just say program, it'll assume the JS extension. But let's go ahead and run that, and you can see that it runs. To start off, let's get our compiler running, and then we can write some code. So if you remember, back in the previous section on compiler setup, we can find the command that will run the Babel compiler. And here it is. So I could just grab that command and copy it and bring it into here. Just a reminder of what it's doing. It's running the Babel compiler on the src directory, so on the program.js file that's in there. It's running in a watch mode, which means that every time we change the file, it's going to rerun it, and it's going to output the compiled code to the lib directory. Now, if I run this right from here, I'm actually in the lib directory, if you remember. So we don't want to do that. We want to be up a level when we do this. I'm going to actually leave this window to be the window where we run the application, and then I'll split the terminal again. So I'm doing that through the split terminal icon here. And over here, I'll run the compiler. So this is a key concept that you need both of these windows to be running. So we ran into a little problem here. It says source does not exist. We must not be in the, I'm planning on being in the ES demos directory right here. But when I open this new window, let's see if I type pwd for present working directory, it shows me that I'm still in the lib directory. So when I split the terminal, it kept me in the lib directory. So I need to jump back up one level. So now if we check the working directory, we're in the ES demos directory. And from there, I want to run the command that's on my clipboard, and that should run okay. And it says it successfully compiled a file. So the basic game here is you want to run the compiler in one terminal or command prompt window, and in another one, you want to take the output of what that compiler output into the lib directory and run it over here And you can do that by just saying node and passing it the name of the file. So now that we're set up, we can start writing some code.